I'm Lawrence Wintermeyer, Executive Co-Chair of Global Digital Finance, and welcome to the OBE live from Glasgow for COP26 and a report on ESG. This is the future of crypto and how crypto decarbonizes itself, and I'm delighted to be joined by Nick Jones, CEO and founder of Zumo. Now, Nick, I know the Zumo team has just produced a new report called Decarbonizing the Crypto Market. Where do we go from here? Can you walk us through some of the key messages coming out of the report?
Yeah, absolutely, and it's been quite a journey for us. I guess from inception 4 years ago, where we decided that we would kind of commit to the net zero project ourselves and looking at our own scope 1 and 2 emissions, and then leading us to looking at our scope 3, which is really the blockchain and the crypto markets, and as a platform that offers Bitcoin as one of its key as one of its key assets. Kind of all roads lead to this space if you want to take it seriously. And so we have pulled in a number of real experts in the space, including Cambridge Centre for Alternative Finance. We've been working closely with the Crypto Climate Accord. We pulled in Alex de Vries, the Digiconomist, and had a fantastic roundtable that pulled together all these kind of differing opinions to really look at what the industry should do. And I suppose there's some top line thoughts, and then maybe the takeaways separately. The top line thoughts are is that the cryptocurrency's got some really key advantages. The crypto and blockchain space has some key advantages in decarbonisation or approaching decarbonisation. So one is transparency and the availability of data. So immutable data, we can understand exactly what's going on, and there's no hiding place. It's going to be much harder for greenwashing to take place in our space than in others. I think that we know that that greening of this space, it kind of naturally aligns with market incentive. We know there's this huge push towards sustainability from global asset managers and from consumers, that everybody's driving into the same space. So the industry will go down this route, and I think it's why something like the Crypto Climate Accord has been embraced very quickly by the industry, and you can see a number of companies embracing now this ESG thing. Whereas I don't think it was on the radar for any cryptocurrency companies a year ago. I don't believe it was. And I think that, as in any space, these cross-sector initiatives are going to be pivotal to driving it. And when we say cross-sector, we're talking about mining, exchanges, consumer endpoint wallets, actual use cases, regulation. As in all of these spaces, it's going to be cross-sector understanding and collaboration will be key to driving it. And I think that's one of the really interesting understandings from being at COP this week, is you having to see these unlikely bedfellows collaborating to be able to drive this stuff forwards. So I think that those are the sort of the broad kind of top line where we're going with the report, but also an acknowledgement that we're fairly early in this journey. It's not something that the industry's been thinking about for a long time, and that this is going to be it is a journey that we're on, but it's one that appears to be gathering pace, and that technologically the blockchain and crypto space is sort of uniquely well set up to deliver. And then I suppose the kind of what are the sort of three key outputs of the report, if you like, is that the data so far, the availability of the data hasn't led to that data always being presented particularly clearly. You're looking at if you're looking at the Bitcoin, for example, and what percentage of Bitcoin electricity comes from renewable sources. You can kind of go either end of the spectrum, from as little as 24 to as much as 75% of the market being based on renewables, and that will be depending on whether you're kind of a Bitcoin basher or you're a Bitcoiner and you're very pro. And obviously the truth is somewhere in the middle. We like the Cambridge Centre for Alternative Finance 39% measure, and that measure will improve now that Bitcoin mining is moving out of China and coal and moving increasingly to Canada, the US, into Russia. If it's not coming from renewables directly, it's going to be a lot easier to buy renewable energy certificates against Bitcoin mining in Russia, for example, than it was in China. So there's definitely ways that that's going to move. So the way the data has been reported has been quite nuanced, let's say, and I think that now the industry is beginning to come together. We can present that data we can present that data more accurately. So I think that's one thing that we're probably past that very nuanced or slightly politicized view of the data that's coming out of the industry. And I guess, when you're looking at the data, the key thing is that obviously Bitcoin is a big user of electricity. So is Ethereum, but don't conflate those two currencies with the rest of crypto and DeFi and the blockchain, because the vast majority of the newer projects in the space are significantly more, by a factor, by hundreds of times more energy efficient or more electricity efficient than the original blockchain. I guess it's a bit like comparing a Tesla with a Model T Ford. One is they're going to do different things because one was the first, and one is right at the cutting edge. So look, we understand there's challenges with proof of work chains. That's why they're not going to be used for payments and for the things that they were originally designed for. That's going to happen on proof of stake, and we're already seeing newer projects which are, as I say, thousands of times, hundreds of thousands of times more energy efficient than Bitcoin. And we're imagining that with Ethereum, the move to ETH2, as and when it happens, will address a number of those energy use problems there. So I think it's kind of, let's think about those separately. And then I suppose the third one is, look, from an industry point of view, this is just electricity use that we have to deal with for the carbon footprint. There's no legacy structures to have to address. I mean, fascinating if you look at this WWF Greenpeace report on financed emissions from the UK's largest financial institutions, which come out by their estimates at 1.8 times the UK's total emissions. So puts it on a level of Germany, and that's because of the legacy. The legacy investments that those financial institutions have. From a crypto point of view, and again, it's not bashing that, it's just being honest about the data. And so from a crypto point of view, it's a pretty simple one. Crypto is created with computer processing power and electricity. So to green and to clean up that space and decarbonize it, we have to move to renewables, same as every other industry, move to renewable energy sources. And in that transition to renewable energy sources, use renewable energy certificates to offset the electricity that's being produced, and that's, as I mentioned, is becoming significantly easier in places like and now that a lot of that mining has moved out of China, or that money has moved out of China. So I think broadly it's an optimistic view, which says that the new wave of technology is significantly more efficient and carries less of the kind of debt, the energy debt, if you like, that the original blockchains does. But that also, because of the nature of the space, from the data point of view, from an increase of collaboration, and from the ability to perhaps drive the adoption of renewable energy and offsetting, we can actually kind of grow. We can improve and drive the pace of change of decarbonisation in our industry rapidly, and I think the beauty of it is it's what investors want, it's what customers want, and I think it's what most people in the community and industry want when they think about it holistically. So we have a confluence here of both economic and I think that's one of the interesting takeaways from COP, which has been a mixed week. But to me, one of the key things here is that the penny seems to be dropping, that economic interest and the right thing to do on an existential level are now aligned, and that if we don't do them, then we are both doing the wrong thing morally and the wrong thing economically. And I think that's probably one of the key takeaways from the week for me, and I think it's where our industry is getting to.
Well, that's exciting. Let's look to unpack some of those things. I think the point that you make and the point the report is making around Bitcoin energy consumption is it's been at the top of my agenda for most of the year, whether it's journalists or technicians in the financial institution sector. And it occurs to me, what's extraordinary is that a lot of the rhetoric, particularly, is focused on energy consumption, when most people have no idea the energy that's produced to deliver most of the things they have today, let alone the the wedding band on their finger, the gold or the platinum, let alone the payments of the fiat money system. I think as importantly, as we recognize that, we're in digital, the world is going to digital. So there's a great opportunity and challenge for us to move to green. Cambridge's estimate of total Bitcoin consumption now to the total, global power supply is about 50 basis points or 0.5%. And, quite often you will have seen as well over the past years comparators to the energy, requirements of small countries like Denmark or New Zealand, where nobody's actually looking at the economic outcome of the capital creation in the crypto or digital asset space, certainly relative to GDP, which frankly clocks the GDP of any of the countries that we've spoken about relative to that energy consumption. So I'm glad to hear, though, that the debate and a lot of the discussion at COP26 is, moving beyond the energy debate and into other areas. And I mean, I think, we're all happy to see that it appears that China and the US look to be setting on a path of collaboration, which I think is hugely important. We're in a world, and most of us are in between two very large bookends, with China on one side and the US on the other. Mark Carney and the Glasgow Financial Alliance commitment to really mobilize 40% of the global capital, obviously hugely important, and many people in the FI and institutional space, of the government space, are really focused on that. But what are some of the other key areas that you see as relates to crypto, digital assets, the blockchain, some of the consensus models that blockchain and digital ledger technologies offer to really help impact our road to net zero?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, obviously, is the kind of basic answer, but I just want to maybe focus in on one, because I think that, possibly one of the criticisms of COP, but probably one of the necessities, is that it has focused in on the biggest polluters. The focus is in on the US and on China, and on India, and to a lesser extent on the UK and whatever. And it's the focus on those companies, the big financial markets, the institutions within those, the very large manufacturers based within those countries, and I guess that's right for a kind of a big UN summit where that's been pulled together. I think one of the criticisms has also been the focus on those large countries and the lack of focus on low middle income countries, many of which are going to be the ones that are most affected by climate change. Sitting in places that are going to be directly affected by flooding, by extreme temperatures, by not keeping below, or trying to keep as close to 1.5 as we can. And the issue of things like climate refugees, which we're obviously always seeing. It was incredibly moving climate refugee vigil in George Square in Glasgow last night that we were at, and I guess it's to me, addressing issues in low middle income countries, and driving financial inclusion and empowering people in those markets to make better decisions, and to move away from growing carbon intensive industries, which is what's happening in many of these markets. Plastic production is going up because people have more disposable income. Burning black carbon, burning of waste is going up because people have more income to buy more things, and goods are more cheaply available. So what we don't want to do is create this sort of void where those countries are left behind, and their environment is trashed and becomes harder and harder places for people to live. And I think there is a direct correlation between inclusion, improving people's financial position, and their ability to kind of be part of this global movement, and to want to be part of it, and for their lived environment to improve as well. And I'll give you a great example of that. So DeFi in particular, which really replicates traditional community-based lending, which is what's been happening in Africa and other places for thousands of years, before banks kind of came along. So DeFi kind of replicates that peer-to-peer and community-based lending, and it's nice in the West. It's great. It's a nice to have. It's an alternative to going to the bank and borrowing money. But I believe in in markets where there aren't banks, or that banks aren't going to lend money to most people don't have bank accounts, which is huge swathes of, I'll focus in on Africa in particular. Microfinancing, which has been on the lips of everybody for the last 20 years, DeFi has the chance to really be what makes microfinancing work for for sole business owners, small businesses. The ability to lend money to grow their businesses in a sustainable way is massively important. And we have worked with we've worked with this fantastic small charity, Waste Aid, which is a circular economy charity, putting in small scale circular economy projects in places like the Gambia, Cameroon, South Africa, India, so places with significant issues with burning of waste, which is both an environmental hazard but also black carbon, and I think beginning to understand just how much open waste burning is an issue. So projects in those markets where they're driving for individuals to form collectives, buy compactors, recycle plastics for either reuse or for chipping for remanufacture. Well, how do those get financed? It's exactly the type of project which decentralized finance and peer-to-peer lending is perfectly suited to, because the finance is happening out with financial institutions, and it's happening, and it's being driven by the community and driven by improving that lived environment and feeding into this overall push of how do we, as a global community, keep to 1.5. So that's a tiny example, and I believe that this kind of community funding of small projects, which DeFi and the cryptocurrency space can deliver across the board and driving inclusion, kind of provides that bottom-up push, or can provide a big chunk of that bottom-up push, which is required, in the same way that we need this top-down push from policymakers like Mark Carney and investors like BlackRock. It needs to be the whole thing. It can't be one or the other. So for me, that is the as yet unfulfilled potential of our space, is to really deliver this inclusion piece. We're beginning to see it. We're seeing it through adoption in Kenya and in adoption in Kenya and in Nigeria and other countries. And I think we're beginning to see the benefits now. The benefits now in those markets is not holding Bitcoin. The benefit will be in accessing, the power of the market to deliver financial inclusion. So that's the exciting bit. That's the very exciting bit for us, and we begin to see that begin to fulfill its potential.
Well, I love that. And for all of you viewing this fireside chat, that is probably one of the most important things, I think, to take away, that the power of the blockchain and DLT technologies is just that. It's to allow communities, average folks, SMEs, to actually contribute to net zero targets, without the G7, G20 apparatus that most of us are normally used to dealing with. So Nick, that's an outstanding point. So thank you very much, Nick Jones, CEO and founder of Zumo, for joining us today. This is the OBE ESG session live from COP26, and I really hope you've enjoyed it. There's been some, I think, really critical data in this, not just about Bitcoin in the energy debate, but the role of DLT and blockchain in contributing to net zero. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Lawrence.